Welcome to the weekly Torah Power-up in less than 10 minutes, based on the wisdom and teachings of the Rebbe, brought to you by Chabad of Nebraska. Let's take a moment and talk about vinegar. Vinegar. Is it good? Is it bad? What's it all about? So vinegar really is the substance that comes along after the process of alcohol creation. Alcohol is made by fermenting sugars in any kind of liquid, whether it be grape juice turned into wine, or any other liquid you might think of, and those sugars can turn into alcohol, and then if you ferment them further, or really in a sense spoil them, then that alcohol turns into acetic acid, and that is vinegar. Now, vinegar, is it bad? Is it good? Well, to some extent, it's bad. It's wine that has gone bad, or especially in the ancient times, that was the main source, the main kind of vinegar was spoiled wine. So it's spoiled wine, really, and it smells a little funny, and if you drink too much of it, you'll probably get hurt. On the other hand, it has healing properties, both if ingested and if you put it as a topical ointment, again, in moderation. It does have interesting things, and it tastes good if you drink a little bit of it and you add a little bit to a salad or such things. It actually makes it has quite a nice taste when done correctly. So it's a very interesting substance. Why am I talking about vinegar? So let's actually approach it and let's look at it and let's think about it on a more spiritual level. And to go there, let's talk for a moment about the mitzvot. The mitzvot from Hashem, there are 613 of them. 613, 248 positive commandments, commandments of what we should be doing, and 365 negative commandments, commandments of what we should not do, prohibitions. Now, seems like a lot. Interestingly, of those, today, we can only perform 369 of those mitzvahs, a little bit more than half. Of the mitzvahs of the 613, only 369 can be performed by us today. Of those, only 126 of the positive commandments and 243 of the prohibitions. Further, of those 369, only 270 are actually commandments that are requirements of every person on a regular basis. And they're going to be required of you in any situation. As opposed to the other 99, which will you're only responsible for our requirements if the circumstances happen to fall in such a way where they would be required. But on a regular day-to-day basis, they are not requirements. Of those mitzvahs, there are six, one more grouping, and I'm going to quiz you on this later. 6 mitzvahs which are considered the constant mitzvahs. Every moment of our lives, we are required of 6 mitzvahs. Those include believing in God, not believing in any other deity, as well as not going astray of the Torah. These are mitzvahs that are mostly in our minds, things that we should keep in our minds throughout the day, throughout our lives. It doesn't have to be something that we are actively thinking about, but as long as it is something in the subconscious, we have performed the mitzvah. I want to talk about 2 mitzvahs that seem very, very far apart, but for somehow in the Torah, they are combined. They are very similar. They're near each other. And those are the mitzvah of Shabbat. Shabbat, the remembrance specifically of Shabbat, and remembering Shabbat, which is a mitzvah in the Torah, as well as remembering the story of Amalek. The story of Amalek is as the Jews were leaving Egypt with their heads held up high, God had taken them out with great miraculous miracles, split the Red Sea, everyone was blown away by the great miracles that had happened and the wonders that God had performed for the Jewish people. A nation known as Amalek, the arch enemy of the Jewish people, attacks them. And God saved the Jewish people and then commanded us to remember what Amalek did. The story, how they attacked us when we were riding high, when we were in our best place. Now, the same words in the Torah are used to tell us these 2 mitzvot. The mitzvah of Shabbat, of remembering Shabbat, and the mitzvah of remembering Amalek, which seems a little bit strange. What is the connection of these 2 mitzvot? Why are they connected? What's the where do they get connected? Seemingly, they're very, very different. They have nothing to do with one another. One, the mitzvah of Shabbat is to remember and commemorate and pay attention to the fact that God created the world in 6 days and then rested on the seventh. The creation of the world by God, a very wonderful and mind-blowing concept. And the other is remembering how our enemies attacked us when we should have been at our high and brought us pretty low. Where's the connection? And in the Talmud, it describes how this question is raised, and the comparison that's given is that they are like wine and vinegar. Now, wine and vinegar are actually very similar. Not just regular wine, but it's actually, the words used are aromatic wine with spices and such, fancy wine, let's call it. Now, that is actually a much stronger connection. Wine to vinegar are very similar to one another. But how does that actually work with the remembrance of Amalek and the story of Shabbat? And the answer is very interesting. If you look at vinegar and what it's all about, that'll really give us the answer. Like we said, vinegar has properties. It comes from wine. It seems like it's bad. But if you take a closer look at it, it actually reveals that there's a lot of good in it. That is actually the story of the remembrance of Amalek. The story really is that they attacked the Jewish people. They were the ones who believed that God doesn't exist. They were trying to tell the Jews, your belief in God is for nothing. Where could it come from? Where could people coming out of Egypt and going through the split Red Sea, seeing wonders of God, where could they even come to such a thought that maybe God doesn't exist? And even more than that, human beings created by God, how could we even think that God doesn't exist? Where do we get that concept? Where does the idea of atheism even come from? And that really is from the power that we have, that we were created by the hand of God. Because we were created by God, we have the ability to believe that we were created on our own, that God doesn't exist, that God did not create the world. So really, if you think about it, these two stories, the story of Amalek and the story of Shabbat, and remembering why Shabbat is there, are really very similar to one another. They are the idea of remembering creation and understanding creation, and also the prohibition and the negative of it, the not thinking that maybe we came into being on our own, not thinking that maybe we created ourselves. And those two ideas are actually very, very similar to one another. It's like wine and vinegar. Now, that is the point of vinegar, especially because vinegar comes from wine. It comes from something great, and it still has good in it. And that's the same thing with the story of Amalek. We have something good to take out of it. Something good to take out of the story by saying, of course we believe in God. Being down in the dumps doesn't mean that we no longer believe where we come from and understand where we come from. Now, I'd like you all to like our channel. That way you won't miss another week's Torah Power-up. And if you have any questions about this class or any other class, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Have a great week, and see you next time.